Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on on InspireSmall.biz. I'm going back to my radio days there. On InspireSmall.biz. What's Indy's Trusted Servant? Well, that's me, Danny O'Malia. I do customer service training and keynote speaking about customer service. It's all about the culture. Why are Chick-fil-A and Nordstrom, and up until Christmas time, Southwest Airlines, better than everybody else in their industries? They had great cultures and somehow they have kept them. And it's very important. I learned all of that from the hand of the master, my late father, Joel O'Malia, back in the O'Malia Food Market days. But even before then, when I was about 9 and 10 years old, in the mid to late 50s, he owned a little grocery store in Broad Ripple, where the Vanguard Bar is now. It had one cash register and 5 or 6 employees, one of which was a little kid, and he lost that store. And 10 years later, he came back and successfully launched O'Malia Food Markets with 9 stores and 950 employees. And one of my lessons from my father was never, ever, ever give up. At any rate, if you want to learn more about my customer service trainings or keynotes, give me a call at 317-413-9062. What's the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz? I like to describe it as lively local small biz and community talk where you can feel the pulse of Indy. And today we got community on the show, and an organization that I've long admired and that has been extremely successful, starting at square one, and we'll hear all about that. My guest is Christine Timberlake with Rocksteady Boxing, and it fights Parkinson's disease. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Danny. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, it's our pleasure. Tell the folks about Christine, your background and what you studied in school, and how you got to Rocksteady Boxing.
All right, I'm going to back it up a little bit. Been at Indianapolis, lived here for about 34 years. I moved here with my daughter as a single mom. She was 4 years old, and I needed a job right away.
Where'd you move from?
Northern Indiana.
That's your home up
Yeah.
there? Okay.
Northwest Indiana. So I moved here, and I have always been an artist. My mother's an artist, my grandmother's an artist, and that was my vocation. So when I moved to Indianapolis, I found an ad in the newspaper for a cake decorator. And I thought, well, I can do that. So I gave the number a call, and the person that I talked to was Michael Hudnut.
Michael Hudnut.
Michael Hudnut.
Okay.
And Michael and his brother Ted owned a bakery.
Was this Bill Hudnut's kids?
Yes, Bill Hudnut's
Son of a
kids.
gun.
So they brought me in for an interview, and all I had was a little tiny portfolio with some sketches in it. And Michael said, I like what I see, and I'm going to hire you. So I worked for the Hudnut brothers at the cakery.
Where was that?
It was 86th and Dean Road.
I have to tell you a quick story about cake decorating. So O'Malia Food Markets had a bakery, and we hired a cake decorator who was beyond unbelievably creative. My favorite cake was a 6-foot-long red Corvette that somebody was giving its son for his bar mitzvah.
Wow.
She did all kinds of stuff, so I smile when I think about cake decorating. Yeah. So you went to work for the Hudnut brothers decorating cakes, and then what?
So fast forward, I attended Heron School of Art and finished my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I went into jewelry design, and I used to make one-of-a-kind custom design pieces at a place called Patora Jewelers with Pamela Hickman. And everything was great. I was married to Thomas. Thomas was working at General Motors truck and bus plant. I was working as a jeweler. You know, life was good. And all of a sudden, Thomas started having these weird kind of symptoms.
Aha.
He was 35 years old, so why would we suspect anything? And little by little, year by year, the symptoms started to be more and more concerning to us. And it took about 4 years for us to get a proper diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. And I'll tell you what, we pretended like it wasn't a big deal, because at that time it wasn't. It was just kind of an annoyance, a little bit of a trimmer that you could put in your pocket, put it under your arm. We call it at Rocksteady, we call it the hand in pocket phase, where people are still trying to work.
But
hide
when
their
they're got a
symptoms.
coffee cup, it's going like that, right? Yeah,
So maybe you'll use the other hand, because usually Parkinson's starts on one side of the body when it's initially diagnosed.
I didn't know that.
So you can kind of hide it for a little while, but 6 years went by and Thomas declined rapidly, because now we know that without offering resistance to Parkinson's disease in the form of exercise and medication, it can progress rather rapidly if you don't give it any resistance.
Yep.
So he was in pretty bad shape. And
Now, what year would this be? About?
gosh, 1998.
Okay.
No, 2000, I'm sorry, 2000, because he was diagnosed in 2000.
23 years ago.
Yeah, 23 years ago. So, unbeknownst to us, at the same time, Marion County Prosecutor Scott Newman was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the same time Thomas was. And Scott was in this hand-in-pocket phase. You better believe he was in that phase, because he was a public figure.
Yeah.
And it became more and more difficult and stressful for him to try to hide his symptoms. And knowing Scott, now the way I know Scott, he wasn't going to take that lying down. So what Scott did was started to box with one of his friends, who was a Golden Gloves boxer, but he was also a lawyer.
So he didn't know for sure that this would do him any good yet?
No.
Okay.
In fact, Scott's neurologist told him, like every neurologist told someone who was diagnosed with Parkinson's, be safe, go home, get your affairs in order, and here are your medications. So Scott and Thomas were on the same trajectory, they just didn't know it. Here we were in Indianapolis. Scott and Tom, both young onset folks with no resources, and I'm telling you, no resources.
Yeah.
Today, that was the dark ages of Parkinson's disease, when all there was for disease management was medication. So Scott found that this boxing regimen, which was difficult, and it was exhaustive, and it was circuit training, it was starting to have a positive effect on his symptoms. So Scott started a young onset Parkinson's group with a little core group of individuals, mostly young onset men and one woman, Paula Tomlin. Hi, Paula. And they started to talk about this crazy idea of boxing. And everyone said, let's do it. So Scott had a friend, Todd Wolf, who was at Premier Credit. So Premier Credit, where's Premier Credit? It's a tiny little collection agency off of Shavelin and 21st.
A collection agency.
A collection agency. So
prosecutor, I get it. Collection agency. Yes.
So Todd said, come on over, you got a free space, I'll charge you $1 a year, bring your folks over, let's do this. So
And this was in the Castleton area, right?
Actually 21st and Shadeland.
21st and Shadeland, okay.
Over, it's the far east side.
Okay. And this was what year? Early 2000s?
Early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so they constructed this boxing gym in the fitness area of a collection agency, and this was not ideal. It was not handicapped accessible. It was not compliant. The floors were slippery. The doorways were narrow. But this was an experiment, and Scott Newman was truly a visionary. And these initial members were courageous because nobody was doing this. So can you tell I'm so passionate about this?
Yeah, sort of.
So they started this experiment, and early in, Scott was like, I need a boxing trainer. I need someone who can devote their time. I need a full-time boxer. So Scott had a friend at Fox 59, and the friend said, there's a retired female boxer that works for Fox 59 as a camera person. Christy Rose Fulmar was a retired 3-time world champion. that just happened to be in between matches. And so Scott called Christy and said, let's go to dinner. And Christy said, am I in trouble? And they went to dinner and they concocted this plan, and they came up with a strategic plan for laying the groundwork for what is now a pretty big organization.
Pretty big organization. So I first found out about Rocksteady Boxing about 14 years ago. Had somebody on my radio show 11 years ago. And it was a gym in Castleton, okay, if I remember correctly. But talk about, just to prove how well this is working, talk about how it's grown.
So we started training camp. Christy was brought on as a full-time trainer. I was the first employee. Walked away from the jewelry industry because the fire had just gone out for me. Because I felt like there was a greater purpose, and it lost its sparkle, pun intended. And I just fell in love with what this was doing for people. And Christy and I started to design training camps so we could bring people in from all over the world. And NBC and ABC News showed up on our doorstep.
This was after you up and running for a while, right?
No, not at all.
Pretty quickly.
The idea of boxing for Parkinson's disease was so compelling to people that it caught fire, and we had world news, we had national news calling us when we had one location, because this idea was so crazy. And of course, everyone heard about it and wanted that kind of hope.
And everyone knows somebody with Parkinson's.
Absolutely. So our phone rang off the hook. We were getting calls from people in Iceland, Norway, everywhere. They wanted part of what we had, and we had to say, we only have one facility. Talk about a heartbreaker. But it also lit a fire under us to get this thing out in a teachable way. We started training camps in 2012. We still do it. Next week, we're going to do a training camp with 40 people from all over the world. They're coming to Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
We now have almost 800 locations across the world, 17 countries, Rocksteadies in every state.
This proves that it's working, I think.
It's working, and it's now, thankfully, research proves that it's working, that intensity matters for Parkinson's disease, and the type of exercise that you do matters.
Talk about the type of exercise. I picture, and I think I remember in my prior interviews with somebody from medicine ball, jumping rope, punching a bag, that kind of stuff, right? And a little bit of sparring, right, with big fluffy gloves, or does it get that far?
Well, first, we don't hit each other. It's a non-contact program.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the coaches do hold these focus mitts. If they're comfortable, they'll do the focus
Okay.
mitts. And
Yeah.
that's not sparring. Would be if you and I were to get in the ring, put on headgear, and hit each other in the face. So we don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that. No. I have to take my glasses off.
But the idea of boxing for Parkinson's is, again, very compelling. It is, I'm telling you guys a secret, it's the hook that gets people's attention. But once they're in the gym, the exercise recommendations are based on Parkinson's symptoms. So they're hitting a speed bag. They're hitting that speed bag, that little contraption on the wall, and they're not really thinking about how this is helping their posture and how this is helping reestablish fluidity and rhythm. We're not thinking about that because it's kind of disguised behind this fun activity, but it's very intentional, which is why we want to make sure that anyone who's working with this population understands the complicated diagnosis and the exercise recommendations that are necessary to help people live their best life.
That's awesome. You said there's now how many gyms? 800?
About 800 different affiliate locations, and we're probably serving close to 60,000 people with Parkinson's across the world.
60,000 people at any one time across the world. How many gyms are there in Indianapolis? Since we're largely in Indianapolis here.
At last count, we had 47 gyms in Indiana, and I think, gosh, this is really pulling it out of the air.
Out of thin air.
maybe 15, 20 in the greater
Metro
Indianapolis
area. Okay.
Because folks with Parkinson's are generally not going to travel great distances, although we have people that drive from Lafayette to come to Indianapolis because they like the facility and they like the coaches.
So is it pretty much one in every donut county around Indianapolis, pretty much, for the most
I
part?
would say for the most part.
Is there one in Carmel?
Yes.
Where's that?
See, I knew you were going to ask that. Maybe Brian can look that up for us while we're
That's
talking.
okay. That's just where I live. So you could walk into a gym and say, can I join? Can I participate? How else can you find out about it? Website, phone number, whatever you want to say?
Info at rocksteadyboxing.org. You can Google us. We're right at the top of the hit list there. And hopefully there's a gym in your area. We have also recently launched, not only for fitness facilities and group classes, but we have launched a Rocksteady training for clinicians to be delivered one-on-one in clinic.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I was going to ask you, you've got a lot of docs and stuff involved in this now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So it's a known phenomenon, a known program. How are you guys funded? Are you a 501c3 or are you a business?
We're a 501c3 nonprofit.
That's what I thought. How are you funded?
Our headquarters here in Indianapolis is mainly funded by our affiliates.
Okay, so they pay a membership fee. Yeah. Mainly. Do you have any fundraisers that you want to talk about? Because I've been to a breakfast or two that you guys had back in the past.
We do have a Coach Con coming up, a conference coming up in September here in Indianapolis. And any local businesses who are interested in helping fund that conference, you can go to info@rocksteadyboxing.org. We also have a golf outing coming up and
June 22nd.
June 22nd.
June 22nd. Okay, tell us about that.
You can inquire again. We have a website, rocksteadyboxing.org, and all the information is on that website about the golf outing.
I think I told you this on the phone when we were talking about doing this interview. I had a buddy who was probably, I was in my 50s and he was in his 60s, and we were playing tennis together, and he told me then that he had joined Rocksteady Boxing and he had Parkinson's, and it had stopped it in its tracks. And this is right when I was discovering Rocksteady Boxing at the time. So he was he was the first person that verified that this thing worked for him anyway, but he was just one person. Right. And it's just incredible that you're all around the world now, and is this really working? So Scott Newman, is he still involved?
Scott's still involved. He does special projects with us. He's still active. He's very social.
Is he practicing law, or what is he doing?
I think he's retired.
He's retired.
Yeah.
Okay.
And many folks with Parkinson's, their new job after retirement becomes their health.
Yes.
So this is an emergency, and Parkinson's does not take a day off. So it's very important that they have 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous exercise.
So they need to go home and exercise too, aside from the gym,
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. If they can get 150 minutes in, intensity matters. I mean, going out and gardening or walking your dog would not count as intense activity, which is the kind of dose that people with Parkinson's need. But it has to be in a safe environment.
Yeah, and that's a problem at home sometimes.
Sometimes,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I told you this on the phone. My younger brother died last May, slightly before his 71st birthday, and he was 6'6", and we didn't know it was Parkinson's, but he was having trouble getting in and out of cars and so on and so forth. And then Alzheimer's came in, okay? And then the Parkinson's got worse. I don't know which really came first exactly, but I think it's safe to say that somebody that has something like an Alzheimer's type or a dementia is at risk for Parkinson's. Have you found that out?
Well, I think there is an increased occurrence of dementia, particularly Lewy body dementia with Parkinson's disease, and you may have heard about that from Robin Williams. And it is the last statistics I looked at was 30% of folks with Parkinson's ultimately have some cognitive decline, but it's not everyone. So that's something that a lot of people with Parkinson's are concerned with. But there is a difference between dementia and slowness of thought, which Parkinson's slows down all the body mechanisms.
Yeah, so they could be intertwined a little bit.
Could be. It's a muddy area, but exercise and keeping that brain active. We do a lot of multitasking. I think bottom line is get up and move. You got to get up and move.
Do you do any mental exercises with these folks at all?
We do, yes, we do multitasking activities. So if I'm holding focus mitts for you and I'm asking you to throw a sequence of punches, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 1, 5, 2, your brain.
That's
and your
brain
body
activity, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we might even, if someone's doing the speed bag and they're doing really well at it, I might come up to them while they're hitting the speed bag and I'll ask them some questions. I'll start peppering them with some questions like, what was your first car? What color was your car? How much did you pay for it? What year was that? So we're constantly raising the bar. If someone has met a goal, we're going to ask them to
do a little
try
more,
a little harder, do a little more, which completely flies in the face of the progressive degenerative nature of Parkinson's disease. So we're challenging people to find out what's possible, and I don't think people are challenged enough. Completely honest. I don't think they're challenged enough.
It's safe to say there's a lot of people that aren't going to your gym that need to go to your gym,
Yeah.
right? And not all of them are going to see this message. How else are you getting the message out?
I think word of mouth. I think now that we have a body of research, a mountain of research that proves that this kind of exercise is important, imperative actually. Neurologists are starting to recommend rock steady boxing and programs like rock steady boxing at diagnosis. So think about that. It took Tom Timberlake 6 years to find hope. And now neurologists are handing them a brochure of rock steady
Right
boxing
away.
at diagnosis.
Yeah.
That's so great.
That's fantastic.
Aside from a cure, that's the best that we can do.
By the way, what's Rocksteady's phone number?
You're going to have to look that up, Brian. Thank goodness for Brian.
Give us that website again.
317-788. Nope. Gosh, this is why I would like for you guys to have edits. 317-288-7035.
If you want to learn more, and that website again.
Yeah. Rocksteadyboxing.org.
Now, how many folks are employed here in the donut counties with Rocksteady? You got 15 gyms. How many folks are employed?
So each affiliate location, and we're affiliates, we're not a franchise.
Okay.
As a nonprofit, that's a little
different.
bit different.
Yep.
So at headquarters gym, which is, we call it Mecca, it's where everyone else comes to train.
Now, where is the headquarters gym?
It's just off of Shadeland Avenue and 77th Street in the Hillsdale Business Park. And driving by, you would never know that there's this beautiful 12,000 square foot facility.
There's no big sign that says Rocksteady?
No big sign up the road, but we're looking for sponsors for that sign.
There you go. And the golf outing is June 22nd.
Correct.
Right? So you might be interested in playing golf and helping out.
Yeah.
Do you have volunteers?
Great question. Volunteers are the backbone of our program. We provide training for volunteers so they understand what classes, what levels they will be best suited for. So we'll offer training for any volunteers that are interested. And also, if you might be interested as a coach to help, if you have a fitness background or you're a clinician, and this program sounds like it would be a great addition to what you're already doing, make sure you contact us about that, and we'll get you trained up.
Rocksteady Boxing, Christine Timberlake, thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Next week, I'm proud to announce that our guest will be my daughter, Colleen O'Malley Stein. She has 2 wonderful businesses. One of them is called Coco Stein Designs. She designs prints that are frameable with all kinds of wonderful motivational messages. And the other one is called Every Kind, and they sell T-shirts with motivational messages and messages of inclusiveness, thus the name Every Kind. She's in that with a partner who lives near Chicago. Colleen is creative and a chip off the old block, so I'm anxious to have her on the show. Thanks for coming, Christine.
Thanks, Danny.
And God bless everybody at Rocksteady Boxing, and we'll see you all next week.